Hello, my name is Kate Kirkwood, and I'm coming to you today from the United States. I'm in Indianapolis right now. I move around the country doing different projects, but most of the time I work in New Hampshire and Vermont, which are a couple of states up in the New England area. And we are right about on the Canadian border, both of them. And so I'm hoping to share some information that you will find helpful. And I hope you'll come to the States one of these days and visit this beautiful part of the country. And I want to come visit you. But for now, let's talk about an overview of lead poisoning in both of our countries and how we can work together and share information. So first of all, I work with a few different companies, and the one I'm going to talk about today is called leadpaintclearandsimple.com or Lead-Edu, which is my educational company. So we work through training, primarily outreach, education. I'm an author. I've written books. I've got a TED Talk. I was a risk assessor. I've been a lead abatement contractor, supervisor, worker, trainer, nationally certified trainer through EPA and HUD. I'm a grant writer. I've written about $15 million worth of HUD grants now to bring money in to help abate properties for landlords and for private homeowners. I'm a program manager. I manage abatement projects in different parts of the country. These are a couple of my books, but mostly I want to talk about some basics with you today and see how we are the same and how we're different and how we can help each other. So, how likely are you to run into lead? That's a good place to start, right? It really depends on the size and the age of the building. If the house was built before 1940, if it's a big old colonial, maybe broken into apartments, then your likelihood of running into lead is great. About 9 out of 10, 87%. So 9 out of 10 houses built before 1940 have lead. Now, we typically say anything built before 1978 is a problem, but actually that's not so true, at least not here. In the 20-year period or so between 1958 and 1978, only about 1 in 4 homes, 25%, 24% actually have lead. So how likely you are to find it depends entirely on how old the house is. And what does it look like? Like an old house. I mean, here's a picture right here. There's nothing that jumps out at you and says, this is lead paint. It's old windows, baseboards, floors, doors. The lead in the soil is often a problem around these old houses. And really, it's not about the paint. It's as the paint deteriorates and breaks down, it's the little tiny bits of dust that are created. Now, this is lead paint. You could not tell by looking at it. But when it alligators like this, breaks up into rectangular patches, the way that this particular column post is breaking up, that's a good indication that it might be lead. So then you test it with an XRF gun, if you have one of those, or a lead inspector would have one, or you can collect a paint chip and send it to the laboratory. You can use one of the sort of over-the-counter devices that are approved or recognized to be effective. EPA has only recognized 2 different kits here in this country. We have D-lead and lead check. So I'm not sure what options you have there, although I believe you have lead check, and you certainly have risk assessors as well. Here is classic chipping, peeling, flaking paint on the outside of a building. This is just wood clapboards. This is a porch roof. I'm sure you see this everywhere. We see it on every street in New England because we have the oldest housing stock in the country. Much of it has been here for centuries. And this paint was such good paint that it lasts 100 years later. It is still on the walls. So here we have a classic, what we call friction surface, stairs, right? We scuff that paint every time we run our foot across the tread, or impact. We kick that riser with our toe as we work our way up the stairs. We call these friction and impact surfaces. And that's where the paint really gets rubbed off, like on the old windows when we raise and lower that sash. That paint gets rubbed off. And then because lead is heavy, those little bits of lead dust filter down onto that window well and that window sill. they eventually end up on the floor. So we see everything, every horizontal surface gets covered with this fine dust, really too small to see. The lead dust is tiny, tiny, tiny. And it's these friction surfaces that are such a problem for us. Here's a floor. Then we don't just rub the paint off with our feet, but with anything that rolls around or moves around on the floor. And again, lead dust being heavy is going to settle out on this floor. So when a child sits on this floor to play, or a baby gets put down on a blanket on this floor, they are lying in the middle of the lead mess. They're lying in the worst possible place in terms of this dust just drifting down. And all they have to do is breathe, and they get poisoned. Just breathe. You know, people think, oh, kids have to eat the paint chips. Not true. In the hundreds of lead poisoned children that I've dealt with over the years now, I've only met a handful that ate the paint. And that was typically because they had some sort of eating disorder. Most of the kids get sick just by breathing, or they put their hands on the floor as they're playing, and then the little tiny bits of lead dust get on their hands, and their hands go in their mouth and they eat it. Breathe it and eat it. Those are the two ways our kids get lead poisoned. So here's a door, again, just rubs against the frame as it opens and closes. It's a closet door. You know, that old house has shifted, the wood has swelled, and that door no longer smoothly opens and closes, but it gets caught and it gets the paint scraped off of it. And we can see 3 different colors of paint right there in that picture. So you are not only exposed to lead at home, but you're exposed everywhere you go. You have a best practices journal that I thought was very good, had a great list of likely exposure locations for you. And I'm going to leave these slides with your folks, with Tess and Michelle and Ananda, who are the ones that brought me into the to the fold here. And so they can give you these slides, and you can click on these links and go and look at these studies yourself. But not only do we come into contact with the paint in our houses, but anywhere we might run into plumbing or solder, or factories that have, you know, fumes where lead has been burned, or deteriorated lead is being disposed. We've got contaminated dust everywhere on our shoes, on our clothing. We have many hobbies or activities where we might run into lead. Fishing, for example, where those weights that we use to pull down our fishing lines are often lead weights. Firing ranges, where we might shoot bullets in an indoor environment, where the explosion of that lead dust is there for us to breathe in if we're not wearing our respirators. Tin cans, particularly ones that come from certain countries that don't regulate the lead very well. We've got lead contaminated soil on our vegetables, on our fruit. Some alternative medicines, cosmetics, unfortunately, don't have the same regulatory issues that we have with our food, right? When we're regulating cosmetics such as lip balm or lipstick, for instance, it doesn't necessarily preclude their using lead as a lubricant, and yet then we get that on our mouths and we eat it. So glazes on commercial pottery, or pottery that we make from home, food and beverage containers, radiators, exhaust fumes, and of course, contaminated dust. So problems that we run into from lead poisoning. It's typically behavioral problems, attention problems, learning disabilities, IQ problems for young children. You know, one of the things we've learned is that our babies who are affected by lead while their brains are developing, we can't fix that. That's a lifelong, permanent problem. Adults who get lead poisoned, we often can reverse that damage, you know, once we discover it. But for children, there's just very little that we can do. Here's a chart showing some of the parts of the body affected by lead. So what is considered poisoned? You know, in New Zealand, your notification rate just changed in April of 2021. It went down to 5 micrograms per deciliter, which is exactly the same level we have in New Hampshire. So we're right on the same page. Ours has come down since the early 2000s from 20 to 10 to 7.5 to 5. I don't know how dramatically your drop has been. In Vermont, they don't consider any level to be safe. Any level of detectable lead in the child's blood, that child is considered poisoned. which effectively means three micrograms per deciliter, because that's the level that our quick test machines can measure, our capillary test machines. CDC, the Center for Disease Control in the US, now considers 3 to be the level of action. So I'm sure soon New Hampshire and probably New Zealand will go down to 3 as well. So what does that look like? Here is an enlarged picture of a fingertip. And on that fingertip, you see one little grain of sugar. If we could take that grain of sugar and chop it up into 1,000 pieces, each piece would be a microgram, each one of the 1,000 pieces. And that, given today's level of poisoning, which is 5 micrograms per deciliter, that little grain of sugar, it would be enough to poison 200 children to a level of 5 micrograms per deciliter, right? Because 5 times 200 is 1,000. So the way that we measure this poison is so small, we can't see it. The amount that it takes to poison a child is much, much smaller than we can see. When I tell parents the amount of lead it takes to poison a child is smaller than a grain of sugar, they say, wow. But the truth is, it's so much smaller than that. They can't even see it. None of us can see it. So that makes it really challenging. How do these children get poisoned? They simply breathe. They are simply down on the floor where the heavy lead dust works its way down to the floor quickly, within about an hour. If you made a big lead mess in the room where you're sitting right now, scraping, sanding, cutting, and then you stopped and went out to lunch, when you came back an hour later, that lead dust would all have settled out of the air and would be on the floors or on the counters or the tables, on any horizontal surface, which makes it easy to clean up. But the problem is we put our children on those floors. We eat our food off those counters and tabletops. So it makes it easy for us to get that dust into our mouths and into our stomachs and into our brains. And adults also get lead poisoned. Contractors who work around this stuff will breathe it in if they're not wearing their respirators, but also they have hand-to-mouth behavior. Contractors smoke, bite their nails, right? Put their hands in their mouths, eat and drink on the job site by picking up cups or eating food containers that have been open to the lead dust on the job site. I tried to find some statistics about childhood lead poisoning, and what I found was it was very difficult to find any. And the frustrating thing is we don't we keep pretty good records in this country, but we don't have a very good rates of correcting the poisoning either. You have to know how big the problem is before you can fix it. And I had a hard time finding any results in your statistics. What I did find was 579 people in New Zealand who were studied for 30 years by Harvard. So there's a Harvard professor who studied these kids from age 3 to age 33. And what did they learn? Well, a number of things, but one really stuck out to me, which is that they linked lead exposure, childhood lead poisoning, to mental illness. So this is the same kind of information we're recovering here at the States. And you can look this up by clicking on this link. Another study I looked at showed 1,000 kids per quarter exposed to hazardous substances. That includes all the household toxins. So it's not a good representation because it wasn't just lead, but still that's a lot of kids, right? 1,000 kids per quarter. Also, I saw that in 2019, the notification rate, that is the rate that was recorded of people getting poisoned, was 5 per 100,000. It came to 204 people that year, which doesn't seem like a lot of people, really. But if you look back, you realize that that's twice as many people as you reported in 2017. So we doubled the number of people reported from 2017 to 2019. And that was mostly adults. I don't think twice as many adults got poisoned. I just think twice as many adults reported. So you're starting to collect the data, which is the really important thing. Also, you saw since 2014, you saw the numbers consistently increase on people in that age range, 25 to 64, people that were Pacific origin, people who lived in low socioeconomic areas, and men particularly. So let's look at some of that data really quickly. Here's one that shows the European data, right? That was the ethnic group that we were seeing. Here are the older men. We see from ages 55 to 64 is the largest number reporting. Here we see painters being the most risky occupation. That's not surprising. But look at the numbers from in 2020, 24 painters were reported. And in 2021, 90 painters were reported poisoned. So we see these numbers just escalating as people begin to understand that they need to report this so that we can identify the numbers and find out where the problems are. Here we have men ages 45 to 74 having the highest rate of lead absorption among people who do not work around it. This is not occupational. This is just in life. Here we are again seeing Pacific and European origin folks. And where the source came from, obviously lead-based paint is identified as the most common, but look at the very next one is where people are from an indoor rifle range. So again, shooting is a big part of lead poisoning. It is here in the States as well. Those lead bullets exploding and all that lead being scattered into the air. So what kind of training do we offer these folks to make sure that they're skilled in how to avoid poisoning themselves and others? Well, EPA, the national standard here is a one-day training, an 8-hour training called RRP, Renovate, Repair, and Paint. And that's required everywhere in the country. Now, EPA will manage that training for us at the national level, but it also encourages the states to take it on at the local level if they can. So it's an 8-hour training. It's required by everyone who disturbs paint in a house built before 1978. So anyone who cuts, scrapes, sands, anyone who addresses this paint in any way to renovate. It's a national certification. It's 5 years, costs about $250 to get certified once for 5 years. Now, that's just general renovation. There is something more specific called lead abatement. And this is for people who are doing the complete and permanent removal of lead. And this is a training for supervisors as well as workers. So we have a 4-day training for supervisors, a 3-day training for workers. And in the states, the 3 states where I'm the most familiar, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine, it is managed at the state level. The EPA has given the jurisdiction down to the states for us to do it. It costs about $650 for this 4-day class, and that only certifies them for 1 year. Then they must recertify for $250 by taking a 1-day class every year. Now, how are we doing in terms of testing the kids? Well, Vermont tests about 80% of their kids at the 1-year and 2-year checkup. That's just automatic, just like getting immunizations. That's a pretty good record. That's probably among the best in the country. Also, Vermont has abatement and RRP certification at the state level. They monitor that at the state level with local enforcement. They also have $6 million in grant programs to help get rid of lead in the state. So that's all good stuff. New Hampshire does not do as well in terms of testing. They only test about 20% of their kids at the 1-year and the 2-year checkup, but they did pass a law just recently making universal testing at every 1-year and 2-year checkup mandatory. So as that law kicks in, they will do better with the testing. New Hampshire has abatement certification at the state level. They take care of all of their abatement contractors at the state level, but RRP is still federal with the EPA. New Hampshire does have $16 million in grant funds right now in the state, though, so they are actually spending a great deal of money getting rid of lead. So how are you doing? Pretty good from what I can tell, pretty good. The master's painter's fact sheet is quite good that I saw. And you have at least one terrific website, which is leadaware.nz. And I have to thank Ananda for turning me on to that. That is a great website that she has there. And you have great conferences like this. This is really exciting that you are doing this here in New Zealand. You still have a ways to go, like most of us. This government sheet that I saw about removing lead paint was pretty antiquated. Dry scraping and sanding was discussed. The burning of lead was discussed. Those are not current practices anymore. But, it's all about education. It's all about letting people know. It's about setting a policy. I don't believe that the solution to these problems lies in fines and laws and requirements. I think no one poisons a child on purpose. I think we simply don't know what we don't know. And so the more we can educate, the more advocacy we have out there, the more awareness we can raise, the better this problem will be handled. It's not about the fines and the laws. It's just not. When we give good people the right information, they will do the right thing. No one wants to see children get sick. So this is about awareness, which is really the most powerful weapon that we have. So I strongly encourage you to tell your stories, test your homes, test your kids, and then talk about it. Spread the word. And let me know what I can do to help. Here's my contact information. Please reach out for assistance. Those are my 3 websites. There's lots of free and good information there. Please take it and use it in any way that you can. Contact me. There's my phone and email if there's anything I can do to help. And I hope to see you all in person next time. Thanks so much for having me.